Hello and welcome to the Even Year Dynasty Show. My name is Cody Ballou. I am your host for this show. This is the first episode. We're going to do a 2024 offseason preview for the San Francisco Giants. In this episode, we're going to discuss where they currently stand in terms of roster construction and payroll. I'm going to talk about the Bob Melvin hiring as well as some important dates for the offseason. So to lead this off, we're going to start off by discussing their current payroll. As of right now, the Giants have $107 million committed to 9 players. Those would be Logan Webb, Wilmer Flores, Mitch Haniger, Taylor Rogers, Anthony DeSclafani, Luke Jackson, and Alex Cobb, who it was announced today that they picked up his club option. Ross Stripling, who announced, I believe, yesterday that he was going to opt in, although he did mention earlier before the season ended that he did not pitch well enough to opt out, which is a surprise to no one. The last one, we are going off the assumption that Michael Conforto is opting in. I do think it's about 50-50 whether or not he opts in or out. With his situation, he currently is under contract for $18 million if he opts in. I do think he could probably get at least close to that on the open market, but you just never know. It depends on if he's trying to get every last dollar in 2024 or if he wants to better set himself up to possibly sign a long-term deal next offseason. I think he could get close to that in a tax-friendlier state that has maybe a better hitter's park that would benefit him more. But until he opts out, I'm going to go off the assumption that he's opting in. So he is included in those 9 players. They have, and this is going to be off MLB Trade Rumors, did their arbitration estimates. They are estimated to give $28 million to 6 players, which would be Tyler Rogers, Tyro Estrada, Lamont Wade Jr., J.D. Davis, Mike Yastrzemski, and Austin Slater. And then the rest, there are projected about $8 million for pre-arbitration players. These are guys like Kyle Harrison, Marco Luciano, Patrick Bailey, Luis Matos, Camilo Duvall is still pre-arbitration. Keaton Wynn, Tristan Beck, Ryan Walker, Blake Sable or Joey Bart, either of those guys ends up on the roster next year, they're going to be pre-arbitration, or Casey Schmidt, Tyler Fitzgerald, those players. Their average salaries are about $700,000 to $800,000. So those guys, this is according to SpotTrack, they are estimating that they'll be paying about $8 million total to all those players. This brings their current estimated payroll to $143.5 million. Their 2023 payroll was about $189 million. So they are estimated to be about $45.5 million under their 2023 number. The competitive balance tax is scheduled to be about $237 million. So that would put them about $92 million underneath that, if my math is correct. So they do have a lot of room to work with in free agency. I know Greg Johnson made his comments during the Bob Melvin press conference. They upset a lot of people. I don't personally have any issue with it. It's not surprising for anybody that's followed the Giants. They were never going to be a team that just repeatedly goes over the competitive balance tax. I know people don't like the break-even comment. It's not necessarily something that you want to hear, but it is a business, and last time I checked, every business I've ever heard of isn't trying to lose money. So, and he did say that for the right player, he is willing to go over the competitive balance tax, and they did do that multiple times during their championship kind of window previously. So they have shown they are willing to do it. They're just not necessarily going to do it year in and year out. So when he says, for the right player, we'll go over, to me, that just screams, if Shohei Ohtani decides that he wants to come play for the San Francisco Giants, they'll do what they got to do. They don't care if it takes them into the over the competitive balance tax for a season. So I'm going to go over their upcoming free agents, the guys that are scheduled to be free agents for the Giants, and kind of I have them looped into two categories. I don't think any of them are slam dunks, should be back. They should do everything they can to bring him back. Frankly, none of these guys really fit that category, but I have kind of two categories. One is going to be the guys that I absolutely wouldn't, under no circumstances, re-sign. And then there's the maybe category where, if they brought these guys back, I understand, and I it would make some sense. As far as the guys that I wouldn't be looking to re-sign, the first name on the list is the hardest one just because of everything he's meant to the Giants, but Brandon Crawford. I love the guy. It is time to turn the page on that. Whether that's Marco Luciano or if they decide he needs more time and they want to turn it over to Casey Schmidt or Tyler Fitzgerald, although I personally would like to keep Casey Schmidt at third base. But either way, it's time. He's had a great career with the Giants. Huge part of two championship teams. He's meant a lot to this organization, but it is time for them to move on. Jock Peterson, I don't see any way they can bring him back, as far as they have two players on the current roster that probably are better suited for the DH role, and they're going to be pursuing Shohei Ohtani. I don't see any way that Jock Peterson really fits into this current roster. You're going to hear me say a lot of times, like sometimes the roster spot is just more valuable than the player. I think this is one of those cases. Yes, he hits righties really well. He is unplayable against lefties. He is unplayable in the outfield. And I just don't see how you can commit good money to a guy that's only a DH. That's, not a situation similar to Shohei, where it's one of the greatest players in the current game. Alex Wood, they just have too many starters that are frankly better than Alex Wood. It's time for him to move on. Roberto Perez is a free agent. They got about 2 games out of him this year before he got injured and missed the rest of the season. I think they could do, if they want to do a veteran catcher behind Patrick Bailey, I think they could do better, or they can stick with Sable or Joey Bart going into next season. Bryce Johnson opted for free agency. I think the fact that he opted for free agency tells you everything you need to know. He's probably on his way out the door. There's kind of a logjam on the 40-man as far as outfielders go. So I think his time is passed with the Giants. The maybe crowd, Sean Manaea did opt out. I can see how he could be a good piece. I mean, from May on last year, he had about a 3.8 ERA. And so he was a solid pitcher if you toss out the truly abysmal April he had. So I could see a situation where they want to bring him in, though with DeSclafani and Stripling as kind of as kind of insurance policies for maybe like Keaton Wynn or Tristan Beck. I think he'll probably be gone, but I kind of put him in the maybe crowd. The rest are going to be some of the relievers. You had Jacob Junis, who had a nice year, Scott Alexander, who had his moments, and John Brebbia. So it was kind of the same thing as Scott Alexander. Any of those 3 guys, I could see maybe being a useful arm. I think it's time to kind of turn it over to some more of the young arms they have in the pen. They have Eric Miller down in Sacramento, who had a really strong season. They have Kaiwei Tang in Sacramento. He's been a starter, but he has battled some walk issues. He might be a guy that's better suited for the pen. So I personally, really, of all of their free agents, I don't really think they should try and bring any of them back, but I am going to put those 4 guys into the maybe crowd. They also have their 6 arbitration guys. I have these kind of broken into 3 categories. I have the locks to return to the Giants. These are the 2 that I would be really floored if they weren't back. That'd be Tyro Estrada and Tyler Rogers. I think those two are for sure going to be back. Tyler Rogers is estimated to get about 3.2 million. Tyro Estrada is estimated to get about 4.8. I have one person in the maybe category, and that's going to be Lamont Wade Jr. Um, I would be very shocked to see gone, but I do see a situation if they were to go get a Pete Alonso or something like that. He could potentially be moved. He's estimated to get about $3.3 million, though. So I don't think that's going to happen. As much as I don't like the platooning to the extent that the Giants did under Gabe Kapler, one bright spot for them last year was the Lamont Wade and Wilmer Flores platoon at first base, where I believe they had the ninth best WAR in Major League Baseball of first base production. The Giants did. Then I have three guys in the trade candidates column. Doesn't necessarily mean I think any of these guys get moved, although I have opinions that I can make an argument that all three should get moved. But that'd be Mike Yastrzemski, JD Davis, and Austin Slater. Yaz is estimated to get about 7.3 million. JD Davis is estimated to get about 6.8 million, and Austin Slater is estimated to get about 3.6. Slater, I think, is the one I would trade probably no matter what. They have a bit of a logjam in the outfield as it stands. Going into next year, their outfielders are lined up at the moment to be Mitch Haniger, Luis Matos, Austin Slater, Mike Yastrzemski, and they've been talking about needing to go get a true center fielder, which, who's that? Tyler Fitzgerald played pretty decent center field, and he's been used out there. I think they're going to want someone more proven. Now, I say that, and then also there is Jung-Hoo Lee, who's going to be a free agent from the KBO, who's a bit of a question mark. Big contact skills, projects as a very plus defender in center field. Won, I think, 5 Gold Gloves in the KBO, so he's a good center fielder. Or like someone like Cody Bellinger. So if they do sign someone like this, they're going to have a bit of a logjam in the outfield. And also, this doesn't even factor in if Michael Conforto opts in. So I think Slater, I would for sure be moving. His calling card is that he hits lefties really well. Well, last season, Austin Slater against left-handed pitching had an 800 OPS. Luis Matos had an 825 OPS. He was better against left-handed pitching. So I would rather give the at-bats to Luis Matos and help continue his development than I would Austin Slater. So I think he gets moved. Mike Yastrzemski, I could see them keeping him around, easily see that happening. He's a very good defender. He versatile. He plays all the outfield positions. So I could see them bringing him back. And at $7.3 million, it's not an absurd cost. But, one of the things the Giants are going to try and do is they want to get younger and more athletic, and paying, 33-year-old Mike Yastrzemski, it's not really doing that for you. So I could see him being a candidate to get moved. I don't know if it happens though or not. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. And then JD Davis, this is not going to be necessarily as popular of an opinion, but I personally would be absolutely looking to move JD Davis. Now, I personally would be playing Casey Schmidt, not super popular. He had a lot of struggles last year, but another guy that had a lot of struggles as a rookie was Brandon Crawford when he first came up, who had about a 584 OPS as a rookie. Followed it up with 2 subpar offensive production campaigns where he had, I think, about a 653 OPS in 2012. They won a World Series even with that. And in 2013, he had, I believe, a 674 OPS. Now, because of his glove, he was still a positive producer, had a 1.9 WAR in 2012 and a 2.2 in 2013. So I look at a guy like Casey Schmidt, who, frankly, they played out of position for the better part of a year. After Marco Luciano got hurt in 2022, they moved him to shortstop. He impressed them there, which, it's good being versatile, but when a guy is viewed as one of the best defensive prospects in baseball or in minor league baseball, and his position is third base, why are we playing him out of position? Put him at third base, let him be an elite defender at third base, and give him time to develop his bat. I know we all want more offense, but I'm tired of watching them give away runs defensively. And he did grade out as a positive defender at third base. He was below average at both second base and shortstop last year. So I'm of the opinion that I would give him time to play every day, let the bat develop. As the year went on, he did show that he was making adjustments. In my opinion, his at bat quality was better as the year went. He was chasing less pitches, swinging at better pitches. Um, so I do feel like the potential is there. And even if he does struggle, if he has a 650 or maybe just kind of creeps up near 700 OPS, he should still be a positive WAR player and a positive contributor. So I would be looking to move JD Davis. Um, he just, I don't think he has a long term future here, but I also would not be surprised if they keep him around for another year or at least until the trade deadline, depending on how their season's going. If they decide they want to give, Casey Schmidt or Tyler Fitzgerald more seasoning down in Sacramento. Couple players that I think are going to be DFA candidates. I already brought up Mitch Haniger in the crowded outfield situation. I don't think they're going to DFA him. I actually believe that he is probably better suited for to be a DH going forward. You know, funny enough, both of his injuries last year did come because of or came while he was hitting, not in the field, but reducing the overall risk of him getting hurt. I think he's a bounce back candidate. It was a rough year. Obviously, that contract does not look good right now. But when you get hurt in spring training and you miss most of spring training, the first month plus of a season, he's already behind the eight ball, and then he fractures his forearm and misses 12 more weeks. His 2023 was pretty much doomed from the beginning. So maybe they try and trade him. I don't think they're really going to be able to move that contract. He's due $19 million in 2024 and $17.5 million in 2025. I don't see them being able to move that, but it's always possible. The one guy that I would for sure be looking to DFA would be Anthony DeSclafani. I just don't see the roster spot, and quite frankly, he's ridden one half of a good season into a 3-year deal, and it's probably time to just give him the Tommy La Stella treatment. He's due $12.5 million. It's a sunk cost. It's one of those where I think the roster spot is more valuable than the player. So I would just be eating that contract personally. Do I think the Giants are going to do it? Probably not. But Farhan did it with La Stella last year, who was due about $10 million. So, and they, people might forget, they once traded for Zach Cozart and Will Wilson, and essentially took Zach Cozart's, I think it was $9 million in order to get Will Wilson, and then immediately cut him. So they've shown a willingness to cut guys. So we'll see if they do that here, but I would not want to see him throw another pitch for the Giants. I can't watch another cement mixer slider get hit about 450 feet. But we'll see what they do there. So that's kind of where they stand in terms of current roster. As far as some important dates that are going to be coming up, We have tomorrow is the first day of free agency. We'll find out by tomorrow whether or not Michael Conforto has opted in or out, and what he chooses to do there. Um, Major League Baseball free agency moves slow compared to other sports, so it starts tomorrow, but we'll see how much action there is over the first few weeks. November 7th through 9th are going to be the GM meetings down in Scottsdale. Um, Not a lot happens here, but I know in the past they'll discuss things like possible rule changes. Um, they might lay the groundwork for some of what's to come, but usually not a lot of action on those. Uh, November 14th is going to be the Rule 5 protection deadline. That's the deadline for which they have to add players to the 40-man roster to protect them from the Rule 5 draft. Um, most guys in the Rule 5 draft aren't very big success stories. Giants happened to get Blake Sable last year, which has turned into a nice pickup for them. And because they kept him on their roster the full year, they're now free to actually put him down into or option him over to the minor leagues if they want to, and they're not having to offer him back. Some players that I think are going to get added to the active roster or to the 40-man roster are going to be Eric Miller. He had a really great year in Sacramento. I think he's actually probably going to be on the active 26-man roster when the season starts. Kaiwei Tang is probably going to get added to the 40-man roster to protect him. He had a pretty good season as well as a starter in AAA. A couple other guys, they have Averson Arteaga and Grant McCray, who were both in High A Eugene last year. Both guys, they might get picked, but with them only being in High A last year, they're unlikely to stick with any team. But a guy like McCray, especially, who stole 52 bags and plays great center field, you might run a risk with a team that's really bad, that is thin on the outfield, that maybe they take him and kind of stash him on the roster all year and use his speed and defense and just live with the struggles of his bat just because they want to keep him. So I don't think those guys are likely to end up on another team, but there's a chance the Giants might protect him, kind of like they did with Marco Luciano and Luis Matos, because both guys are probably going to start the season in Double-A Richmond. November 17th is going to be the non-tender deadline. That's the deadline to non-tender any of the arbitration guys' contracts. All 6 of those guys are going to get tendered a contract. Whether or not, as we discussed, whether or not they're all back next year remains to be seen. Now, the big one is going to be the winter meetings are scheduled for December 4th through 7th next year. December 4th through 7th this next month. That's going to be where the draft lottery takes place. Rule 5 draft takes place. A lot of action typically takes place during the winter meetings. And so hopefully by then we'll have seen the Giants have made some moves. Last couple thoughts I'm going to do are discuss kind of the Bob Melvin hiring, which I'm personally a big fan of. I don't like that it came with a Farhan Zaidi extension. I personally would have let both Kapler and Zaidi go, but I understand they had to do it. Bob Melvin was never going to come to this team with the lack of stability that would have come with Farhan being under a 1-year deal. Hopefully it doesn't mean that he's just going to kind of act like his job is secure going into 2024 and not do much of anything. Hopefully he realizes this fan base and team needs some star talent and elite players, and the fans are just fed up with how it's been. But overall, I do like the Bob Melvin hiring. He's got a great history of getting the most out of his teams and developing young players. He has they talk about wanting a recruiter. Well, two of the best free agents on the market right now are Japanese players, and Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Well, Bob Melvin is highly regarded from guys like Ichiro and Hideki Matsui and Yu Darvish, who he's coached. Um, so this could be beneficial. I'm personally a believer that your manager is not, guys don't line up going, oh, I want to go play for that manager in baseball. So, my opinion, I think that gets a little blown out of proportion. But I do also think your manager is either going to be a deterrent or it's just going to be a non-factor. I think Melvin's going to be closer to the non-factor. It swings one into their favor versus another team. But I look at a guy like Gabe Kapler, and he was probably a deterrent for a lot of guys that probably would not have wanted to play for him. I don't think that's going to be the case with Bob Melvin. He's a 3-time Manager of the Year award winner, so he's had a lot of success in the game. Obviously I have some concerns with how 2023 went for the Padres, as do a lot of people, but a guy that's managed in the big leagues for 20 years, I'm not going to just look at 1 year. I get it's the most recent season and there's a lot of recency bias out there, but you look at the Padres situation and really it was a poorly constructed roster. Yes, everyone likes to look at all the stars, but you get a guy like Manny Machado who, yeah, he might have been hurt, but he still had over 100-point drop in his OPS. Fernando Tatis had a drop in his OPS from the last time he played. Xander Bogaerts is paid like a star. Now, whether he really is a star, it's kind of up to each person. Juan Soto had a great year. He was probably the one guy that did show up and play like a star. But then you look down the roster and, their rotation, they had Blake Snell, who was really good, and Michael Wacha had a nice year. But outside of that, their rotation wasn't great. You look at their bullpen aside from Josh Hader was pretty terrible. They had 3 or 4 guys that really should not be starting on a major league roster, and they were playing every day with all those stars. So, it was kind of a weird situation. Obviously I have my concerns like everyone else, but I'm not going to judge him off of one season when he has a long history of getting the most out of his teams and having teams overperform. I mean, you're talking about a guy that took Oakland to the playoffs 6 times in a 10-year period there. So the playoff record is probably more concerning to me than anything, but when many of his playoff appearances came in Oakland with the whole Moneyball setup, it's been kind of proven, and Bruce Bochy just winning his 4th championship this year proves that the analytics and Moneyball philosophy, it's great for a large sample size. 162 game season, it's probably going to be a good way to run your organization. But when you get to a short series in October, you just throw that all out the window, because when it's determined by one at bat, you can't just go off the number, the analytics. Those don't factor. The game's not played by robots. It's played by human beings. It doesn't factor in, who's hot, who's cold, who sees a guy well, who doesn't. Last year, there were several games where Jock Peterson started, for instance, where I remember a game where I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Lance Lynn when they were playing the Dodgers one day, where Jock Peterson, yeah, he has a 900 OPS against right-handed pitchers. So, the analytics in Moneyball will sit there and tell you to start him. But then you look at his numbers against Lance Lynn, and he was 1 for 14 with 7 strikeouts. So it doesn't factor in things like that. So I like, I don't really too negatively judge him for the playoff stuff, but it obviously is a concern. But overall, I think it's going to be a really good hire. I think it's a massive improvement over Gabe Kapler. So I'm pretty thrilled there. honestly, I'm almost more thrilled with the coaching staff that's going to surround him. It does sound like a couple of the people are going to be back from the existing staff. I think Kai Correa, Lissanakin, and Mark Hallberg probably are all going to return from what I'm hearing. But it sounds like he's going to bring, I believe it was Jeff Christensen, but I could be wrong. He was the associate manager in San Diego. He's been with them since Oakland. And then, Matt Williams, who Giants fan favorite. I don't think any Giants fan is going to complain about Matt Williams being back in San Francisco. Some rumors of guys like Ryan Fogelsong wanting to join the staff, maybe Pat Burrell. I heard JT Snow wants a spot on the staff. That'd be pretty cool. So, we'll just get all the old timers back and make the fans happy that way, I guess. I think Andrew Bailey is probably going to be gone if I had to guess. I haven't heard one way or another there, but it kind of sounds like there's a high possibility of him ending up with an East Coast team. But other than that, that's going to be it for today's show. The next episode, I'm going to go over kind of some offseason targets, where I think the roster can mainly improve, and whether it's trade candidate or trade targets, free agent targets, and we should have news on the Conforto situation, so I'll touch base on that too. But until next time, thanks for everyone for joining. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm going to add that into the bio. But otherwise, until next time, bye.